Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's session of Stronger Together, focusing on businesses helping businesses in downtown Marietta. For those who don't know, my name is Christy Thomas. I am the Executive Director of Marietta Main Street. And before we get started with today's speaker, I'd like to just share a few notes. First, this session is being recorded and will be made available for review after the meeting. You may choose to keep your video on or off during the call, but I do ask that everyone mute their microphone before and after any questions. Presentation will be shown courtesy of the speaker once we get started. It's up on the screen now, so please make sure that you can see that either on your desktop or your cell phone. Second, I encourage those who are present to ask questions during this session. You can either raise your hand using the raise hand button on the bottom of your screen, or you can type a question into the chat box. Third and last, this program is put forward by Marietta Main Street thanks to the efforts of our Economic Vitality Committee. If you're interested in joining that committee or any of our other 7 committees, just let me know. Now, for today's session is Branding Your Business, presented by Sara, Rosenstock, owner of Just a Jar Design Press on Front Street and professor of graphic design at Marietta College. I'm really excited to hear Sara speak today. I know she did our rebrand and a lot of, worked on a lot of popular brands here in Marietta. So her expertise is definitely one that we appreciate that she shares it with us. So I will hand this over to Sara and let you take it away.
Great. Thank you, Christy. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about branding, but also just design specifically in an accessible way for those of you who aren't trained in design, don't have expensive resources and software available to you, to try to make sure that you feel empowered to use visual communication in a way that is effective for your business and organization. So one of the things that you want to keep in mind is that a logo alone is not a brand. So a logo is just a graphic. It's how you use that graphic and what the graphic represents as part of the business that becomes the brand. So every interaction you have with your clients, with your consumers, with your customers, that's part of your brand. So the logo just kind of represents that. It's almost like the cover of a book, just kind of gives you an essence of what's going to be in the book, but reading the book inside is actually the overall experience and what you remember. So that is something when you're looking at all of your materials, making sure that they look visually cohesive and they so we always have perceptions about certain businesses and certain logos and companies. Someone might be walking down the street, see a sign or just the front window of a business and immediately judge what it might contain and whether or not they can afford what's inside or they're interested in what's inside. We all know that. We judge each other by how we dress, how we look. We judge books by their cover. All of that is part of how we can communicate and engage the customer and consumer. So we should be aware of that. When we think, oh, this doesn't really matter, I'm just going to throw this out there, it actually does build up and matters. So don't be overwhelmed by saying, oh, I can't spend hours on every little thing. The fact is if you set yourself up for success by having templates and having things already created, it actually streamlines the process so you can be empowered to use design effectively. So when you look at something and you see a visual, it's important to understand that visuals, not just text, actually communicate a lot quicker to an audience. And so that's why it's so impactful to use an image with text in combination. And you don't want to use too much text on something, but one engaged graphic can really do a lot in order to make sure that someone looks at your flyer, your card, your brochure, your website, et cetera, et cetera. Even a website specifically is something that can be overlooked. The thing is that it takes so quickly to judge something by their website. And the fact that so many people say that they judge the credibility of a company based on the website really means that you can't overlook it. And if anything else, the pandemic has showed us that the virtual world is incredibly important in how we reach our consumers. So you really want to make sure that you pay attention to your social media, your online presence, because you may not be able to always get those people physically in your store or your organization. So don't overlook that importance, the importance of having a website. A lot of times people just have a Facebook page, business page, and call it a day. But the fact is Facebook is losing users every single day. Generationally, people are getting off of Facebook. And so you don't want to depend on it solely as your way to communicate to your customers and your demographic. So it's a good tool as part of a kit, but don't depend on that solely. In essence, good design, good visual communication can create good business, good perception, good relationships with your customers. All those things are things that you really want. So here you are, you don't have much time, you don't have a lot of money, you might have more time than money, one of those things. What can you do and actually to use good design? So here are some tips specifically for logos, and then I'll talk about other design materials as well. In logos, some of you may have already have a logo, and that's fine. You can tweak a logo that you already have, to improve it slightly. Or if you don't have a logo, this might be helpful as well. So one of the things you always want to keep in mind when you are developing any sort of logo is it needs to be simple. This little graphic has to work on a little button or business card and a billboard, okay? It can't have a lot of complexity to it. That's not what a logo is for. If you have an idea for a great illustration as part to communicate your business, that can be used as part of your other materials like your brochure or something like that, but not the logo. You want to make sure it's appropriate. And so Toys R Us is a great example of like, this would not be a good logo for a lawyer, okay? Because it's just not appropriate, but it's appropriate for being playful and colorful for the audience of children and their parents. So another thing is that you also want to make sure that your business is also named appropriately and uniquely, so that if somebody is searching for it in a search engine, they're making sure that they are getting the right business that they want, and making sure that you have good placement in Google search results and search engine results. So these are the things that you want to avoid when you do design, and so that you can make sure that even though you're not a designer, you can still implement these tips. First off, you want to make sure that your design, the audience is related to, what you're actually doing. So for example, I like to say, just because your audience may be children doesn't mean it should look like it's done by a child, okay? So you want to make sure that it is appropriate, but still looks polished and professional. You never want to scale anything out of proportion. And that goes for text, that goes for anything. So proportion is basically, our faces are a certain proportion. If we look like you're out of proportion, it looks like a funhouse mirror. That same thing goes for text. If you need to fit all this text into a small amount of space, you need to find a tight face that is skinnier so you can fit a lot of text in there. Don't smush it. That's a good cue to an audience of when somebody is not, it's not very polished or professional when they see things out of proportion, and it throws everything off. There's a lot of fonts out there that are free and available for you to use that can be useful for these purposes. You also don't want to include too much content on any sort of material, whether it's a flyer, a brochure, something in that nature. It's often the idea is that we want to put the more the better, okay? Just like, toppings on ice cream sundae is that, I'm just going to put all these things on. But the fact is, if you put so many toppings on an ice cream sundae, you cannot differentiate any of the flavors. It just becomes a muddled mess. And the same things happens visually when you put too much content on a page, on a document, is that we can't, it's hard to differentiate all of it together. So narrow it down to the essentials. And then if you want to include more information, include a prompt such as check out our website or visit here to learn more. And that will help you engage your customer or your audience in a more dynamic way, and so they don't get overloaded. You also want to make sure that you don't emphasize more than one area too much. And so this is what happens, is that people put all this text on and they're like, oh, I want them to see this and that and that and that. So there's like bold and capital letters and underline and all this. But the fact is, if you emphasize too many things, nothing's emphasized, okay? Our eyes, same thing as like an ice cream sundae, okay? Too many very flavorful toppings, it all gets muddled together. You need to have a top note. You need to have something that is clear. Oh, this is strawberry ice cream, okay? And so that is something that you really want to consider when you are trying to determine what content is on there. I'm gonna show you guys a quick video of something that I think really encapsulates what happens with designers and business owners often in a fun and playful way.
Is your tiny logo-loving designer always cramming your beautiful logo into an obscure corner of your ad? Well, not anymore. Now that you've got Make My Logo Bigger cream. Yes, that's right. Now you can make your logo bigger with our new and improved easy-to-apply cream. Just watch as the cream is applied. And presto, you've got a huge logo in just seconds. You paid your neighbor's nephew's friend a whopping $50 for that logo. Make sure you display it with pride. Got a website? Make My Logo Bigger cream works online too. Just watch that baby grow. Get your Make My Logo Bigger cream for 3 payments of only $29.99 each. But wait, there's more. Order now and you'll get a limited time offer special bonus, White Space Eliminator. Is your designer wasting valuable space on that expensive ad of yours? You spent a lot of your hard-earned money on this ad, and look, your designer hasn't even used half the space. What a waste. White space, white space. Get your money's worth with White Space Eliminator. Now you can spray away that empty space and fill it with persuasive marketing messages. Just look at how fast White Space Eliminator removes that boring, wasted white space and fills it with convincing messaging that will surely get into your customer's head. And White Space Eliminator also works great with your online campaigns too. Boring white space on your website? No more. White Space Eliminator does the trick every time. Just look at how easy it is to put those wasted pixels to work. Call now and get.
So basically that video kind of encapsulates often what happens when designers are working with clients is they think that having your logo bigger actually makes more sense, like it's more impactful. But again, the fact is that all different elements such as white space leads the eye to emphasize an element such as the logo when there's white space around it. Those are things that actually you should consider. And to empower yourself to be a designer, those are things that you want to consider as well. So it was just a playful kind of turn on it, and it goes on actually to a starburst powder and an emotional plug-in, so you can put puppies on things, you know, to attract clients. So if you're interested, you can always search for makemylogobiggercream.com and you'll find more. So this is something that you should consider of when you might want to hire a designer versus resources. So just like when you were building a house or an extension, okay, you might know how to do a lot of DIY, you know, putting up drywall, putting in insulation, etc. The thing is that when you have your foundation poured, you are likely going to hire someone to create that foundation for you, because everything else is built on that foundation for that home. And if you do anything wrong or correct, you know, and then if the foundation is poor, then it will all crumble. And that's where I will say when you should hire a designer is probably when you, if you're not familiar with design, of when you're creating a logo or a brand. That is something a designer can at least give you a logo that works well and perhaps get you on the right, you know, right direction for your other materials, give you the typefaces, the colors, all those things that you can then start to apply in other materials. And that way you get set on a good foundation, because it's really nearly impossible to go backwards and try to rebrand a company with a logo when it already has a connection to a business. So just keep that in mind. For resources to empower you to be designers, these are some things I would suggest. Before and After magazine was an educational magazine that they have books, and they also have an online presence. And they do a really good job of breaking down common materials and how to design them using the key design principles and elements. So this is a book, but I encourage you to check it out if you actually want to design specific materials for your business. How you can do that, like software oriented, I think Canva is the best one out there. I know that Marietta Main Street uses it robustly. A lot of people use Canva, and because it's very accessible, there's a free version of it, so you can create template-based designs, so you don't even have to design anything from scratch. If you pay for a version, you can actually create your brand by choosing certain typefaces and saving colors and logos. For websites, I highly suggest Squarespace as the best website content management system. You do not need to know any sort of coding or design in order to make a fantastic website. And so that is something that I would encourage you to look at. And then if you ever need additional resources, Creative Market is a really good resource for a lot of digital assets. So this is an example of Creative Market. If you had a MailChimp campaign, for example, and you wanted your newsletters to look nicer than, you know, something that you use a default, is that you could actually pay for a MailChimp template, and then it can make your work look even more polished. Creative Market has tons of photos, fonts, like it kind of goes on and on, but it's really affordable. And so that's my favorite one. And then this is just an example of what Canva looks like when you sign in and you can choose your different templates and such. So that's all I have for you today. I would encourage you to reach out to me if you have any additional questions. I do have, I forgot to put a slide, but it's Sara@justajar.com if you have any questions for that. And it's really important. As an design educator, I want to empower people and using visual communication effectively. So I understand that not everybody has it in their budget to hire a designer, but that doesn't mean I can't help you be empowered to do that. So thank you for your time.
Awesome. Well, if anybody has any questions, feel free to, pipe up and share. I actually do have some questions for you since we're together, because I know I get questions from downtown business owners frequently about marketing and branding. I guess one of those questions, I know you mentioned that obviously it would be best practice to hire a professional for businesses to set that foundation. So to create your toolkit so that business owners can have folks do marketing and branding for them. But say we can't do that. What are those tools that business owners should have in their toolkit to ensure they are consistent in their marketing?
Well, I think that is important. At the very least, if you're going to invest at all, I would invest in a paid account for Canva. Because what you can do is you can save your templates for things. And you have your logos and all your colors and typefaces built in there. So if you're trying to do a social media graphic, you do one and you save it. So the next time you do it, then you can make a variation of that, whatever. And remember, branding is about consistency. It's about consistent experiences and how the culmination of that. And so it's really important for that. Sometimes people just randomly choose different things and there's no consistency. So bare minimum, I would say pay for an account for Canva because it's incredibly valuable. I know that Marietta Main Street uses it, and it is really valuable. It's something that I've watched it grow even exponentially since it first came out, of how accessible it is. You can make animated GIFs, you can make all sorts of different things in it. You don't have to be designers to make things.
That's awesome. There's two other questions that I have because I get them often. So one would be, what would you tell a business owner if they said they didn't need a website?
So my first question is, okay, so how do people know about your business? And if they say, oh, well, word of mouth, and then people walk in, okay? And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. Now, word of mouth is, I say, hey, Christy, I just went into this great shop. Oh, I think it's called just something. I can't quite remember. This happens all the time, right? Hey, I just visited Marietta. It's such a cute town. Oh, there's this cool shop. What is it? What do? You Google it, okay? And the fact is that you need to understand that most of us have our phones and we look it up. Even if we don't buy things through your business, we need to have an online presence. And especially generationally, if you only have a Facebook page, it is not very accessible. So for example, especially restaurants, I become very frustrated when a restaurant does not have their menu online. Okay. Because what if I have someone who has an allergy that I want to bring them there or something? I just want to see the menu. And often is something Facebook does not do well. Okay. It's being able to allow you to see all that stuff. And it does deter people who don't like Facebook to have to look at things. You also can barely control your branding in Facebook. And I say barely, like you can put some things in there. But again, privacy settings, all of that stuff, Facebook is great for one thing, but it doesn't fulfill all needs. And so I suggest Squarespace because it's really hard to mess it up. The templates are designed super well. They're mobile ready, so they're easy to, you can integrate all your other social media in there super easy. And I know some people use more affordable services like Weebly and such. Those just tend to be much easier to make it look poor. And so not to say they can't be excellent, you just have to have a little bit more skill and making sure that it looks polished.
Thank you. The last question that I know I get from folks is, and you may or may not have an opinion on this, but stock photos versus real photos when I'm showing off like merchandise or inventory inside my store. Do you have any commentary or opinions on if there's one is better than the other or when one might be more appropriate?
So I think that if you were selling things online, so e-commerce, if you are selling a product that from wherever you got that product, they have a stock photo for it, use that. That's fine. It's the same product, right? If it's your own product that you were making, you obviously can't have a stock photo for it if it's something really unique. I think that anything on social media should not be a stock photo. It should, that's the social part, that connection is that you're capturing like that candid experience, or just like, oh, this new product that just came in, even though it's like not that new, like there's that essence of like spontaneity in social media that you can't use for stock photography. But a lot of people get products that they don't have stock photos for. And so I think that the ones, small businesses that do it successfully are that create a system of being like, oh, I have this alleyway behind my business that has a cool brick wall. I just bring things out there on a good light day, and I have a table, I put things out and photograph it, or I have someone put on a shirt and photograph it. So there's an element of the consistency that's always in the same place. An overcast day is going to be much better light. And so in general, if you're not a photographer, photograph outside, and you're going to have much better results with lighting.
Awesome. Thank you. If there aren't any other questions, I'm not sure if there are, but I will just say thank you so much to Sara. That's like an awesome presentation that you gave. I heard that you're going to send it to me ahead of, after this presentation so that I can share it with folks downtown. If anybody does have questions or wants to follow up with you, I know you shared your contact information, so we certainly encourage folks to reach out to you. And that'll be that. Next month, our Stronger Together series, I believe we're welcoming Dina Clark, who is the Executive Director of the Marietta Washington County CVB. She's going to talk about hospitality, especially as we get into a peak of tourism through the summer, certainly more than we had last year. So we're excited to prepare our front lines to welcome guests to Marietta and keep them coming back. So thank you, Sara, so much. Really appreciate your time today. And with that, I will bid you adieu.